Well, thank you guys so much for coming out. My name's Julie, and I co-own Meadow City Native Plant Nursery in Cleveland. And if you were to see me in March of last year, for about 3 weeks of the month, I was covered from head to toe in mud, frantically digging 4-foot deep holes to put together a fence on a vacant lot in Cleveland. So today I want to tell you a little bit about how, together with my co-owners and with our community partners, we hope to use that small 1/3 of an acre vacant lot to boost biodiversity throughout the region. So these are my co-founders. This is Alyssa Zerly and Dave Tomaszewski. And we met while we were in school at Ohio State for Environment and Natural Resources, where we did our master's. We also got to know each other well while we helped start a student chapter of the Society for Ecological Restoration. And after graduation, Dr. Talamy's book, Nature's Best Hope, came out. And throughout the country, gardeners turned towards creating habitat through native plant gardening. And we went a little step further. I quit my job, and so did Alyssa. I went to work at Natives in Harmony, and Alyssa went to work at Holden Forests and Gardens, where we went to learn how to grow native plants. And soon after, Dave started helping us out. And when we realized how good he was with customers, we poached him from his job at Ohio State, too. So it was our goal to start Meadow City to help combat the habitat losses and troubling trends in biodiversity that we're seeing today. So when we imagine habitat loss, a lot of people imagine something like this happening somewhere very far away. But here in the United States, habitat loss often looks a little bit more like this. So, you know, when we break up our habitat and replace it with lawn, we create a fragmented landscape. And that wildlife that lives in that landscape and those fragments is much more vulnerable to external pressures like climate change, novel pests and diseases, and invasive species. And it's really habitat loss that is driving some of the troubling wildlife trends we're seeing. So let's take a look at some of those briefly. In North America, since 1970, we've lost between 1/4 and 1/3 of our birds, a bird abundance. So that's 1 in 3 birds lost, 3 billion fewer birds out there today. In Ohio, we have some really good historical data on butterfly abundances. And within my living memory, we've lost 1/3 of our butterflies. And then when we look at bees, over 1/4 of our bumblebee species are threatened with extinction. Much of this is due to habitat loss. And when we're looking at restoring habitat, whether we're working with a residential yard or a large landscape, restoration usually looks like putting native plants onto the land. And our native trees, shrubs, wildflowers, and grasses have all existed in this area for thousands of years. And during that time, they've co-evolved with local insects and wildlife to form specialized relationships where one depends on the other. So just like monarch butterfly caterpillars can only consume milkweed leaves, the same goes actually for 90% of our insects that eat plants. 90% of our insects are specialists, and they can only consume a narrow range of native plants. And that's why plants that are introduced from other areas just aren't able to support wildlife in the same way that native plants are. Unfortunately, native plants can be hard to get your hands on. So as this survey respondent said, and it sounds like a lot of people agree, the average homeowner or facilities manager can't find native plants easily, has trouble telling what's native and what's not in nursery stock, and they can't tell what the provenance of these plants is. And this was part of a large survey of conservationists in the eastern United States, and they found pretty much the same thing across the board, so it's not unique here. The same thing was found by the Mount Cuba Center, located in Delaware. They did a survey of established nurseries. I think it was 14 nurseries in their area, and they took a look at what they were selling, because what we plant in our yards largely reflects what we're able to get commercially. So they found that 70% of the plants being sold were non-native, and of the 30% that were being sold as native, only 1/5 of those plants, 6% of the total, were our wild type, straight native species versus a native cultivar or a native hybrid.
Is there significance? I mean, are those not good, the hybrid or the cultivar? Are those less?
That's a great question. So with native cultivars, some of them can still support native wildlife very well. However, when we breed native plants, we're usually taking in consideration mostly how they look. So you can breed, a really beautiful coneflower, which, no one's looking at, well, how much nectar is this producing? So sometimes they're less attractive to wildlife. And then for me, the larger worry, even if it does still support wildlife, it may not be, we don't necessarily want those genetics escaping onto the landscape and influencing our wild populations. So,
So it's still better to stick with the native?
It really is, it really is. Yeah, I imagine if you're familiar with low-grow sumac, it's like a wonderful native ground, native-R, cultivar ground cover. But I wonder, if that gets really ubiquitous in our landscapes, how does that influence the wild species that is existing out there? Is it getting swamped, and are its genetics changing? So anyway, that's an aside, but I'd be happy to answer more questions. Okay, so on top of this, 4% of the plants being sold were listed as invasive or were on an invasive watch list. So these are plants that are escaping from our yards and getting into parks and into other wild places and degrading our habitats by outcompeting native plants there. So this is why we wanted to start a 100% native plant nursery that was local ecotype, so people could feel really confident in what they were getting. Our goal was really to help anyone create native habitat on their property. And beyond that, we wanted to help people form a deeper connection through their gardens to the wild landscape. And given that it was only a team of the three of us, we knew we couldn't do it alone. And we've depended along the way on our community partners. So I'm going to highlight some of them today. So what we were going to need mainly was some land, native seeds, and a public that had an awareness of the benefits of native plants. So I'm going to talk about land first. As customers, as many of you are, we were aware how difficult it can be to get your hands on native plants. In most cities, you have to drive far out of town to find a specialized nursery, or maybe you have to wait for a one-day special native plant sale. And that's why we really wanted to start a nursery with regular open hours that would be easy for people to find so more people could discover these plants. And our first iteration of the nursery was actually in a friend's backyard. If any of you know Roy Larrick of Bluestone Conservation, he let us just take up his backyard and make a big mess. That was in fall 2022 when we did our very first pop-up sales. But the following year, we were able to get a lease on this vacant lot from the city of Cleveland. This lot used to have a home on it, but it's been sitting vacant for the past 10 years. And our first partner really was the city of Cleveland. It's not enough to just have vacant land. The city of Cleveland has done a lot of work on vacant land reuse, and it's thanks to their urban agriculture program that we were able to grow on site and sell those plants on site. It really lowered the bar for entry for us, and we were able to start with just our savings.
Can I ask a question? So I want to speak up so everybody can hear. Do you do to see if it's EPA, I mean, that the land is okay for use for even, like plants and not necessarily edible plants, but.
Yeah, good question. So the question was, do we have to do some kind of EPA assessment to make sure the plant is safe to use, or the land is safe to use? This came from the city land bank, and it's the residential land bank. I don't think, normally they don't require a large scale, like level 1 assessment, but they did require us to do a soil test. It's mostly because most people are using that kind of lease to grow food. So we had to do a lead and arsenic test, but all of our plants are going above ground in pots, so it wasn't really a concern for us so much, yeah. Okay, so this was our first day of construction. We had beautiful weather. And
snowy day.
I know, no, it started out great, and then it was like, what's happening? So we actually thought that with a group of friends, we could probably build a fence in one weekend, I don't know. But it turned into 3 weeks, hence the story about being covered in mud. But we did finally get it done, and this is what the nursery looks like now. Thank you. The nursery is located in North Collinwood, within Cleveland, and we're right off I-90, so it's really easy to find. And we're really 15 minutes or 20 minutes from anywhere in Cleveland and many of the surrounding suburbs. So this really allowed us to reach a lot of people, and by our count, we've been able to bring native plants to a 20-minute drive from 700,000 people. And because we're in person, we really try to give a lot of support for people getting into native plants. So even for a lot of experienced gardeners, they might not be familiar with the plants, or they might not know how to make them look good in a garden. So if you come to the nursery, you'll usually be greeted by one of us, probably Dave, and he's going to offer to show you around and help you pick out plants. And to make things really easy, we have the plants organized by growing condition. So if you have a shade garden, you can go right to the shade section. And within each section, we have them organized by bloom time. And we've got little cards that have a lot of information on them. And for those of you who like plants, maybe because you don't love interacting with people, we see you. So on our website, we try to replicate this experience. We have filters that you can use to find the right plant for you, and we have some really nice, beefy descriptions of all the plants. And you can order for pickup at the nursery on the website. Beside the nursery, we've started a native plant garden. This is where you can see what the plants look like when they're mature. And we've got another third of an acre to work with there. So we really hope to create a beautiful green space for the neighborhood to use, as well as an educational garden where you can get inspired and get some ideas. This is right next to the nursery. So the nursery is inside the fence, and it's a big piece of city right-of-way that we can't build on, but we can put a nursery or a garden there. Alyssa grows all our plants from seed on site. She's a real stickler for quality. People are kind enough to say our plants get established really quickly. We use plastic-free pots, and we don't use any pesticides that would come home and, harm insects on your property. And because we're a bit space limited, we've actually partnered with West Creek Conservancy, who spoke before me, to source and store our peat-free growing mix. Around the corner from a nursery, we have acquired some more vacant properties, and we're using these to practice growing trees and shrubs. So Alyssa calls this baby's first tree nursery. Trees are really, they're not very forgiving if you neglect them, and it's really important that they be high quality because you want them to last on your landscape for a long time. So this is where we're kind of honing our methods for growing trees and shrubs, and in the future we hope to graduate to a larger site so we can grow more of those. And if we expand, we are going to need more seeds. So that brings me to the need for seed. At Meadow City, we're kind of obsessed with seeds. I get to do our wild seed collection, most of it, and it's really one of the most fun parts of the job. It's like a treasure hunt, even though it's a lot of work and takes a lot of time. And in our seed collection, we're guided by the International Principles and Standards for Native Seeds and Restoration. This guide, directs us in a number of ways in our seed collection. So one thing it teaches us is how to sustainably harvest our seed. The first thing we want to do is make sure we're not impacting that wild population when we collect, and it's able to continue to grow and thrive even though we've removed some of its seeds. So on a given day, we never collect more than 20% of the seeds that are ripe, and a lot of times it's much less than this. We also want to make sure that we're sourcing our seeds from an appropriate location. So Meadow City is a local ecotype nursery, which just means that our plants are descended from local wild populations. And when we collect our seeds, we primarily collect from the Erie, Ontario Lake Plain here in blue, and sometimes we venture into the Huron-Erie Lake Plain. Part of the reason we do this, we could purchase seeds, but some of our largest seed growers are located in the upper Midwest, and we're a little bit concerned, for us about using those seeds because we want our plants to be resilient for climate change and the warmer temperatures that are coming here. Another reason we're hesitant to purchase seed is when using seed from other areas, that can change the bloom time of your plants and what they're used to. And this summer was really long and hot, and we saw photos from some people's gardens where something like New England aster, which should be blooming now, was blooming as early as July. And that's concerning because, for example, if the monarchs are migrating through at this time of year, we don't want our gardens to be done blooming when they need that nectar. The final thing we consider is genetic diversity. So for a lot of our plants, we could get all the seed we need from one single plant, but we don't want to do that because we want to avoid inbreeding. Just like if you were going to colonize Mars, you wouldn't want to send one couple. The same goes for starting a new population of plants on your property. Another reason genetic diversity is so important is that there's more likelihood to be some genetic resistance in a population that's diverse. So if you've got a new disease coming in and impacting your plants, it's a lot more likely that that population is going to survive and thrive if there's some individuals there that might be resistant. When we started the nursery, we wanted to be local ecotype. We weren't really sure if we could. It's a lot of work to follow that guide, and then access to wild seed is another issue. But when we got started, we had access to 3 privately owned properties and a couple of protected properties. And I thought maybe we wouldn't find any cool plants. But as the seasons changed, we saw how diverse and abundant these properties were. And there are really a lot of high quality sites throughout Northeast Ohio, even outside of our parks and preserves. These days we collect from around 20 sites in Northeast Ohio. Most of them are privately owned, and we really appreciate the trust of these private landowners to allow us onto their property and collect seed. We really try to make sure that it's a good experience for them and they get to learn about some of the cool things that they have on their land as well. We also partner with some conservation organizations to collect seed, and I'm not going to mention all of them, but Summit Metroparks has been a really good partner for us. They actually created a program that encourages growers to apply to collect seed and then use that seed to create seed plots for their future production, so we're not collecting over and over in their parks. So it's thanks to them that we were able to add wild columbine this year to our collection, which it's native to our area, but it just hasn't shown up at any of our other sites. So for the future, to reduce the amount of time we have to spend collecting seed and the pressure on those populations, we're working to start some native seed plots. We're working on getting a lease on these vacant lots down the road from the nursery, and we want to plant some large plots that would be able to preserve that genetic diversity, that's reflective of the native populations. Now, these seeds would not be available for sale. We would use them within our own plant production. Because to produce native seeds, you really have to be a farmer. You have to have a lot of land. It's a whole different skill set. And unfortunately, if any of you have looked, it can be quite difficult to source local ecotype seed anywhere in the eastern United States. Most growers aren't able to track the origin of their seed to ecoregion or to county. There's Ernst Seed, which is a big grower that tracks some of their sources to state level. But we've been able to partner with Native Beginnings, who's an experienced grower who's really committed to tracking where his seeds come from. So we share some of our seeds and plants with him, and there's some species that we purchase from him instead of collecting on our own. And ultimately, the dream would be that everybody could just go and buy their seed and know where it came from any grower like Native Beginnings, including us. Did you have a question?
So I have been collecting seeds on my property for probably 30 years, but they're sort of mumbo-jumbled now, and I don't know what they are, and I was just going to throw them out. Throw them out into the yards. I don't think that's a good idea, because I don't know if some are native, I don't know what I have. Probably just pitch them.
I guess if it were me, you could plant them in your garden and then you can see what comes up. And and then if there's anything in there that you really don't want to plant, then yeah, it could be really interesting. Definitely. In some parts of the country, there is available local ecotype seed, and that's come about through partnerships called native seed partnerships between conservation organizations and seed growers, and it takes a lot of coordination. But something we're really excited about is that Holden Forest and Gardens has started a seed bank to address this very issue. And Kim Lessman here in the picture heads that up. She's going to be working closely with the Lake Erie Allegheny Partnership and the organizations that are part of that to create a better native seed supply chain in our area. It's a really big undertaking, but we're very excited about what she's done so far. And For us, we ultimately hope that in addition to the ecological benefits of local ecotype seed, that people feel more connected to the natural landscape because they're going to be literally allowing local wild populations to reseed in their own gardens. Okay, so here we are. It's fall 2022. We've spent months collecting these seeds, growing the plants, and we made our first big step with a pop-up sale. I've quit my job at this point, and if there's a little thought bubble, I might be thinking, is anyone going to buy these plants? Does anyone want them? So the third thing that we needed was a public that had an awareness of native plants. We called the nursery Meadow City because we envisioned a city that was full of abundant habitat. And we know that for that to happen, we have to reach people from all kinds of different backgrounds. It takes a lot to go from pristine lawn to homegrown habitat. But when we arrived in Cleveland, we found that a lot of the work had been done for us by many different organizations, including Cleveland Metroparks. And one that we want to highlight today that really inspires us is the Heights Native Pollinator Path, which is run by the Friends of Heights Parks. If you drive or walk through Cleveland Heights, you'll see some streets that have these native plant pathways for pollinators to use and to move through. They're made up of tiny tree lawn gardens like this one and big lush front yards, and together they come together to form more than the sum of their parts. And this project really goes to show the power of one person to make a difference in their own neighborhood. This is run by Peggy Spaeth and John Barber. And then we're also really grateful to Ann Cicerella, who has been hosting symposia and inviting really great speakers to our area for many years now, including Doug Tallamy, I think before Nature's Best Hope. So she was really ahead of her time, and we appreciate the work she's done. At Meadow City, we also try to take every opportunity we can to do outreach and education. If you can't tell, Dave is really our public speaker, and he's got a great repertoire of well-researched talks from how to create pollinator nesting habitat in your yard, to soft landings gardens, to children's programs. And we love sending him out to speak to garden clubs and libraries and churches and neighborhood associations and the like. At the nursery, we also like putting on hands-on workshops. In interacting with our customers, we've learned how there can be a big gap between wanting to do something eco-friendly on your lawn and knowing what to do with that. So we've been experimenting with different ways to help, and something we rolled out this fall are our Shrink Your Lawn kits. So with these kits, you can come to the nursery and pick up all the supplies you need to smother your lawn and to create a native garden bed. Something we're hoping to work on in the future are pre-designed garden kits. So imagine if you could come to the nursery, get an affordable kit of 50 plants that was designed by a designer and was modeled after local ecosystems like Castalia Prairie, shown here, that's located in Erie County. Dave is working on some soil and plant surveys so that we can start offering these in the future. And we're really looking forward to giving one more step of connection to the local landscape. Something we thought about doing is, if people got these kits, offering once in a while tours of these wild locations so that you could understand the plant community you have in your yard even more. Finally, we also partner with some different local conservation organizations. Wild Ones Greater Cleveland is out here today, and we help them get started with the Northeast Ohio Native Habitat Corridor, which is really modeled after the Heights Native Pollinator Path I showed earlier. And if you go out there, I believe you can get a yard sign and sign up if you're interested. We've also worked with the National Wildlife Federation's Sacred Grounds program and with the Western Reserve Land Conservancy on native plant giveaways. So in addition to supplying the plants, we always try to offer something extra to make sure that people are successful with those plants that they get. So for Sacred Grounds, Dave went and gave a special presentation about the value of native plants and then how to plant the plants and how to maintain your garden down the road. And for Western Reserve Land Conservancy, we made these little takeaway 4-plant kits that had written instructions on them so that people would know what to do with them. Finally, in our neighborhood, we're also trying to find ways to give back. So at the end of this month, we're going to be hosting our first Free Native Plant Day. A giveaway will be part of that, but we're also going to do some hands-on workshops. So don't tell anybody, but you don't actually have to go to a nursery to get native plants. They reproduce themselves, so we're going to have a workshop on how to start native plants from seed and on how to divide plants in your garden to share with your neighbors or spread around your yard more affordably. Ultimately, in all of this, you all are our best partners. By creating habitat in your yard, not only are you boosting biodiversity, you're giving permission to those around you to do the same thing. And it's our hope that through their gardens, people will connect more to our local wild places and preserves, and that when they hear of threats to birds and insects, they think of their birds and their insects that are in their yard, and they're more compelled to act. So this is our dream, and we're just getting started. So thank you very much for coming out.
Grow low, and is it possible that when you have a cultivar and it reproduces, it's going back to the original rather than reproducing as a cultivar?
That's a good point. I don't know enough about cultivars. I think there's different cultivars types. Like some are bred gradually over generations to become a certain way, and some are naturally occurring weirdos that people are like, oh, I want to propagate this. So I think with some types rather than others, it might be more likely that they would revert. So for example, we've come across white and light pink tall ironweed from time to time, and those probably have the other wild genetics within them. So yeah, I don't know.
I was thinking of low grow because I have some, and after I planted it, maybe a year later or two, suddenly I'm getting native sumac.
Oh, wow.
All over my garden. And I never, it just occurred to me when you said that, maybe that's where it's coming from.
I think that's possible. I've heard definitely of some cultivars reverting after a few generations to their more wild state.
It grow anywhere. It's just native, so.
Maybe that's it, yeah. It's not a common, that species isn't really that common in the wild here. So if you have that same species of sumac spreading around, I would imagine it's from your cultivar. Yeah.
Can I just share this about Nature My Backyard?
Oh, sure, yeah.
So, for those of you who haven't had a chance yet to stop at the table out, one of the tables out there, it's called Nature My Backyard, and it's kind of it sort of goes along with everything else that Julie was saying, and it's Nature in Your Backyard. It's with the Audubon Society and the National Gardeners of Cuyahoga County. We are working on this, and what we do is we come out to your home. We assess your yard to, you talk to us about what you want done. Like, I want to get rid of this area of invasives, and I would like to plant some native plants. So we have you start, slow. We're not trying to come in and tell you got to cut down everything in your yard. But again, we talk about the biomass, like one oak tree, and how many caterpillars you need just for, for chickadees to be able to survive. So it's a great program. We come to your house. It'd be like an hour to 2 hours, depending on how talkative we all are. And then there's a program that you can, find out about, the steps you can take, and, we'll mentor you along the way, and then you can get a sign like those other signs in Cleveland Heights, for your yard, and your neighbors start asking, and it's kind of the Doug Talbot theory of, connecting with one another, and this is also associated with the Audubon. So please help yourself, go up there, there's people to talk to that have more knowledge than I do. Thank you.
Thank you for bringing that up. Yeah, I want to say it for the camera. I'm sorry I wasn't able to mention it, but yeah, Nature in My Backyard, it's a really excellent program around here, and if you're one of those people especially that's like, I want to do something better, but I don't know how, they will come out and give you advice in your own yard, which is really unique, and it's free. Yeah. Okay, hi.
So we just moved back to the area, and in Boise, where we're from, there's several native nurseries who do sell seeds. So I've done a lot of seed starting in the past, but because of doing that, what's your suggestion other than going out and collecting wild and finding sources for those native seeds?
Sure, yeah. So if you're interested in local ecotype and sourcing, I would start with Native Beginnings. Ernst Seed also has Ohio ecotype for some of their species. There's Ohio Prairie Nursery, which doesn't really report the source, but they're a local grower, and I think probably a lot of their sources are local. And then Prairie Moon always has the best selection, so there may be species you're not able to find there that absolutely go to Prairie Moon. And I know they get their seeds from all over, including Ohio, so you may be getting local ecotype seed even if you're buying from Prairie Moon.
Do you see your company doing, like, selling seeds themselves?
You know, to sell seed, you have to go through a testing process, which is kind of expensive, which is why it doesn't work to grow them on a small scale. Maybe, like, I'm not going to say no down the road. I think if we were to offer seeds, we would want to provide a lot of support, because starting a garden from seed in the ground is like, it's kind of an advanced move. It takes some extra knowledge, so we want to be able to focus on that a bit more. Yeah. Hi.
Is Cleveland, I live in Cleveland Heights, do they help you with native trees for the tree lawn? They have to supply the tree, you can't just put any tree on your lawn.
Okay, so I remembered I was supposed to repeat the question. So the question was, in the city of Cleveland, will the city help you with a tree lawn tree? Is that right?
That's native.
That's native. I think in Cleveland Heights there is a program like this, I think. I think that Cleveland has quite a bit less funding. So I think that, like, if you're in an area where the city is doing a planting, they may give you a choice of different trees, but I don't think that well, I think they have on the website something where you can request a tree, but I'm not sure how active that is.
How would I know if it's native?
Yeah, unfortunately, I'm not certain. I'm not sure how active that program is.
Because my oldest
yeah.
died, should have come out last year, but I'm glad it's not, because the birds are still loving it. But, yeah, and squirrels too, but it's gotta come out, and then I will get to choose from whatever they have available to plant a new one. I wanted to do something native.
Well, maybe this isn't your question, but if you need help determining what's native, you know, if they've got a list and you're like, what should I plant? The Cleveland Metroparks actually came out with a native tree selector tool that you can use. So that would be one place to start. There's also, like, the ultimate source for, like, where something grows is the Biota of North America project. They have these different, like, range maps. And you can always email us if you're not sure which, like, we're happy to answer questions like that. Yeah. Oh, sorry. No, go ahead.
With the vacant lots, is there anything citizens can do to get our government to make that someplace we can plant, or you could plant? I mean, can we help with that?
Planting in vacant lots?
Well, getting people like you to come out and plant, getting the okay from the city government for that. Or is that something you have to do directly with the city?
I think, you know, the answer to both of these questions, I think, is the city of Cleveland doesn't have, like, a lot of extra resources. So with the land bank, I think for the most part, they try to keep it very, like, you know, they just mow it, and that's, like, probably as much as they can do. There is a process that you can go through to lease a land bank lot, and it's very affordable. It takes a while. And the Western Reserve Land Conservancy works with some people that are doing gardens on vacant land, and they sometimes provide grants and stuff. But I think that might be something where, you know, somebody would need to get a lease on the property and get permission to do it. Does that help?
Yes.
Okay.
I would suggest to her to go to the Ohio Department of Natural Resources, the Forestry Division, to get the information you want about native trees. Because I know that, like you put where I live, used to get get their trees from Klein, and Petiti's have taken over, and they're not doing trees anymore, so.
So to reach out to your Ohio Department of Natural Resources if you're interested in some more information about trees. Yeah.
I'm taking a course in tree commission academy, and the teacher mentioned one nursery around here, but I can't remember what it is. Just go straight to the source.
That's great. Any other questions I can answer? All right, thank you guys so much for coming out. Enjoy your lunch.